Hello, Ohio State fans. Thanks for joining us. Whether you joined us live here shortly after Ohio State's win tonight, or you're listening to this after the fact, the Buckeyes get it done against Purdue 59-31 on what was a Saturday afternoon turned into a Saturday evening here in mid-November. I'm Patrick Murphy with Bucknuts 247 Sports. We were supposed to be joined with Dave Biddle, but we were having some technical difficulties, so I'm just going to run this one, and we'll get out of here this way. It was an interesting night for the Buckeyes. Come out, looked really good in the first half. The Buckeyes went down the field, scored touchdowns on their first six, scored points on their first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Field goal on one of those for drives, and before they had to punt. So the offense was certainly good, and we'll start with that today. And C.J. Stroud, another great game for him. Quarterback, 31 for 38, 361 yards, 5 touchdowns. You know, a lot of people have been hard on C.J. Stroud. I'm not one of those people. I think for a redshirt freshman, he's been very good this year. He's a guy who has put the team on his back at times. Last couple of weeks haven't been great. They've played better defenses, and he struggled with some of that after the 2 interceptions at Nebraska last week, those type of things. So Stroud today, though, was good. He had some very good throws. He didn't even get probably his best throw. It was down the seam to Chris Olave, which would have been another touchdown for the game. He was called back for a holding penalty. So that was unfortunate. C.J. Stroud even said after the game how he wished he had that one in the stat book instead of it coming back. But still, huge day for him, another one. And, I thought he was very efficient, made some really nice throws. The run game, that got going again, too. Buckeyes had 263 total yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. 2 of those came from TreVeyon Henderson, who finished just short of 100 yards, 98 rushing yards today. The Buckeyes needed to get that run game going. It's been a problem the last few weeks, just haven't been able to churn out those yards, especially, and Ryan Day said this after the game, the short yards, things like that. They turned those 3-4 yards into 5-6 today. That's exactly what they need to do, especially here at the end of the Big Ten season as things continue to get worse weather-wise and things like that. So a good night. Mayan Williams, too. What he end up with? Actually, he ended up with 117 yards. No, that's not right. They've got that wrong in there. What did he end up with? Williams, 117 yards. So a big day for him coming in for TreVeyon Henderson. They kind of split stuff. TreVeyon Henderson left the game early or late in the first half, but was clearly fine, played in the second half. The passing game, as I mentioned, was good. Garrett Wilson made a big comeback after missing last week's game. 10 receptions on 11 targets, 126 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had a 51-yard rushing touchdown, which is the first time we've seen that. He can do a little bit of everything. You know these names. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 9 for 139. He became the first Ohio State wide receiver since, I think it's 2018, Paris Campbell, to get over 1,000 yards in a season. A big year for a guy who wasn't thought of to be one of Ohio State's big 2, kind of an afterthought. And he's leading Ohio State in, I think, every receiving category except touchdowns. And he caught another one today. Chris Olave, a quiet game, so to speak, when compared to the other guys. 9 catches on 13 targets, 85 yards, and a touchdown. I mentioned he had that one called back that Stroud said he would have liked to have to Chris. So the offense was good. The offensive line played better. It was what we'd seen from Ohio State during that run where they were just putting up 50-plus every week. These last 2 weeks, we haven't seen that. What didn't go so well was the defense. And I know that's what a lot of you have mentioned already in the comments that you're disappointed with. Ryan Day said after the game that the plan was to drop 8 a lot of times. They knew Purdue, a very pass-heavy team, one of the best passing offenses in the country, was going to throw the ball a lot. Purdue doesn't run the ball much at all. They average, I think, roughly 10 yards, 10 carries per game, 10 rushes per game, something along those lines. So Purdue does not run the ball much. Ohio State knew that. They wanted to cover that in the back, so they didn't put a lot of pressure on Aiden O'Connell, and he was able to pick them apart. Let's be honest here. 390 yards, 4 touchdowns, but this is kind of what he does. He's done it all year. He's a good quarterback. They obviously have good wide receivers, a good offense in general. But you're still disappointed, and I understand it with what was happening defensively. Bryson Shaw getting beat over the top for that touchdown. He's supposed to be the last line of defense for Ohio State. Obviously, a guy who they didn't expect to start coming of the year. Josh Proctor was supposed to be that guy. Get injured, and Bryson Shaw's thrown into a role than he expected. He's got to be better. He said as much after the game. We got to talk to him. I think this is the first time we've talked to Bryson Shaw after a game this year. And he said that play over the top can't happen. And he said it won't happen again. So we'll see. Remember, this is a young guy who's playing for the first time, probably the first time he's seen a passing attack like that. And Ryan Day made that point too. This was the first time they'd seen such a pass-heavy offense defensively. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't have been better. This Ohio State defense the last 2 weeks has carried this team, that and kicker Noah Ruggles, who only had to make one field goal today as opposed to the 8 he's made 2 weeks combined. This defense has been very Jekyll and Hyde. Obviously, the way they started the year was bad. They made the adjustments. They tweaked some things, and it looked like it was getting better, obviously against inferior opposition. And then even these last 2 weeks, Penn State was a decent job. Nebraska was a solid job. But I've said it a couple times. Other people have said it. This is still a work in progress. This defense is going to take time, and Ohio State doesn't have a ton of time. I mean, there's 2 more games left in this regular season. Michigan State, Michigan, we'll get to those in a second. They win those, they're in the Big Ten championship game. And then you hope it's the college football playoff. And the one thing I will say is I don't think that they're going to see much of an explosive passing attack, at least maybe until the playoff. You look at the potential matchups down the road. Michigan State, they're a run-heavy team with Kenneth Walker III. Michigan doesn't throw the ball that well, though they've gotten better throughout the season. We can talk about who they're going to meet in the Big Ten championship game. Potentially this Purdue team again, depending on how things work out. Though today, obviously, was not a result they wanted if they wanted to get there, but not in the division. So it'll be interesting to see there. But none of those teams, except for maybe Purdue again in the Big Ten West, I think scare you from a pass defense, perspective. If you get to the college football playoff, you're looking at an Alabama team. They throw the ball well. Georgia's much more of a run-heavy team. And, Oregon, you've already seen their quarterback's playing better, but still not a guy who's going to tear you up through the air. If Cincinnati gets in, obviously they can throw the ball, but we haven't seen them play against this level of competition, except maybe that Notre Dame game, sort of Indiana. The pass defense is certainly an issue. I think the biggest problem is over the middle of the field. I think cornerbacks play pretty well. Seven Banks probably should have done better on the touchdown pass early in the game where he was in good position. He just didn't make the play. Denzel Burke, probably his biggest challenge, though Jahan Dotson would like to have something to say, the Penn State wide receiver, about that. But he was pretty good today, I would say. David Bell ended up with 11 catches for 103 yards. His long was 23. He's an explosive receiver for Purdue that, wasn't held in check. I don't want to, oversell it, but they did do well against the run. Only 91 rushing yards on 19 carries, 4.8 yards per carry. You'll live with that. But certainly still a work in progress. They need to figure out that middle of the field, whether it's the linebackers not allowing those or the safeties, not allowing those big plays, or the linebackers making plays in pass coverage. They're just getting beat there too often. And this has been a theme all year, and it's something that hasn't gotten better. And, this may be something the Buckeyes just have to live with and try and, do as much as you can on the outside, know that that's a weakness in the middle, do as much as you can to solve that. But also, you have an offense that can score with anyone in the country. Now, it will be interesting to see if they end up playing a team like Georgia, who's been really good defensively, how that works. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves there. I think that you just have to focus on these next few games from a Buckeye perspective. You've got to keep getting better. And I think you've certainly seen signs. You've seen guys, young guys especially on defense, Ronnie Hickman, Denzel Burke, the linebackers and Cody Simon and Steele Chambers, who I was surprised they weren't on the field more today, still doing a lot of rotation with linebackers, which I don't really like. I think you stick with the guys that are your top guys. I do think that they want to keep guys fresh, and I get all that. But, in the second half, he let Purdue get back into it because you had 2 linebackers on the field who couldn't cover, and you're going against a pass-heavy team. It didn't make sense to me. So that has to be better, I think. But, I think this is what Ohio State's going to be this year. And, you have this explosive offense that can score points with pretty much anybody in the country. Yes, they've had some hiccups, but I think they're getting past that. And then you have a defense that is good, not great, and continuing to get better. Obviously, before any sort of college football playoff, they'll have a few weeks to practice and tweak some things and whatnot in between the Big Ten championship game and stuff. But they've got to handle their business first, and I think that's most important. Michigan State next week here at Ohio Stadium. That's obviously a big one. The Spartans, there's the whole debate this week about number 7, number 8. Michigan was ahead of Michigan State despite the fact that they played. Doesn't really matter. Buckeyes are going to face both of them. Michigan got the job done today against Penn State on the road, so they're still high. They're going to continue to be highly ranked. These are not going to be easy games. I didn't think this Purdue game would be as big of a point differential as it ended up being, but the Buckeye offense came back to life, so to speak, scoring in the red zone, which was important, scoring touchdowns in the red zone, I should say. That's going to be key in these next few games. You got to be able to run the ball. You got to score points. If you get crummy weather here next weekend or up in Ann Arbor in 2 weeks, CJ Stroud, a guy who's from California, hasn't had to deal with that, have to be able to run the ball. And that's gonna be the key to me. Maybe they get lucky and the weather's great for these next 2 games, and then you're in a dome in Indianapolis and the college football playoff, you play in good weather or inside domes. But I don't think you can count on that. So they have to be able to run the ball, and the defense has to just continue to do enough. I'd love to see them get better. I know everyone else would love to see them get better. I just kind of think at this point in the season, it is who they are. And, I think you can still learn. I don't want to say that coaching stops and players don't get better at this point in the year, but as a whole, we have a big sample size now in this Ohio State defense, and it's the same issues, the over-the-top stuff. I do think they can put more pressure on quarterbacks. Obviously, as I said earlier, if you missed it, Ryan Day said they wanted to drop 8, rush with 3. They knew that Purdue was going to pass a lot, and they didn't want to risk big plays. And they did give up a few, but for the most part, they limited guys like David Bell. So, it's work in progress is a word I've used a lot, but it just there's only so much time to make progress. And I think that's kind of where we stand with things. I still think this Buckeye team is the best team in the Big Ten. I think they'll win these next 2 games, go to the Big Ten championship game, and, this will be a college football playoff team. From there, I think it depends kind of on the matchups, and, you have time to scheme and things like that. You hope that Ryan Day and these coaches have something ready to go. So I think as a Buckeye fan, that's really all you can hope for right now. And that's where you want to be at the end of the season. You want a chance at the Big Ten title. You want a chance to make the college football playoff. You have that with 2 games left to go. Has it been perfect? Absolutely not. There's still issues, even on the offensive side when they're putting up 500 yards per game and things like that. This is one of the best offense, if not the best offense in the country, but there's still things that they can improve upon. And defensively, obviously, as I said, it's that stuff over the middle. It's those issues in the pass game, and that's either got to cleaned up or you have to figure out ways to kind of work around that. And I think they're going to have to figure out ways to work around that when they play passing attacks like today. I don't think they'll play anyone who's as pass heavy in terms of numbers and kind of the tilt of the offense, but they'll certainly play some, if they make the playoff, they'll certainly play some talented quarterbacks down the road. So I'm going to wrap up. Steve's already got a game recap up on the site. Dave, despite not being able to join us for this, already has what we learned for our VIP members. We'll have plenty of more stuff. Ryan Day's press conference will be up shortly if it's not already up there, and plenty more tonight, obviously throughout the rest of this weekend. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're listening to this live or really on anything, please like, subscribe, whatever it is on your platform. We appreciate it. That always helps us and lets us continue to do what we do. So thank you guys for tuning in to this one, and we'll catch you guys later this week. Appreciate it.